That's an awesome question. You know, somebody asked me that the other day. It's like, after all these years, why now? And first of all, I want you guys to know that there's stories, baseball stories in the book, but it's not a baseball book. So there were a lot of things that led up to that book, and there, just so you guys understand, the book is I'm going to talk about growing up in Yankee Stadium and what it meant, and I'm going to get to your question, and then I talk about the tragedy and the anger and the sadness first, the anger and the guilt of losing my little brother to leukemia when I was 15, he was 11. I gave him a bone marrow transplant that put him into a coma, and I felt like I was the killer. And it was like that, by the way, from that moment through the '93 World Series, it was after the World Series that winter that I finally went and got some help. And all of those emotional breakdowns was that anger that lived inside of me. There was an animal that was on the inside of me. So, and I didn't care where we were, by the way, or the circumstances or the consequences. Like if me and you got into a conversation and I didn't like where it was going, we ended up fighting. I was like, I didn't care. You know, it didn't matter. I didn't, you know, so there was this animal that lived in me. And then, so I talk about that. And by the way, I don't know if some of you probably remember that myself and Dave Stewart were caught up in a police brutality case, and nobody's ever heard the story, and I tell the story and in the book. And it's important because, you know, we were gagged and we were never allowed to say one word. And when the case was over, we never said a word about the case. And we never laid blame on anyone, but, you know, we got the shit beat out of us in Tampa by 26 police officers. And when I say we got the shit beat out of us, it was like they pummeled us. And I tell the story in the book. And because, you know, any one of you, just like me, you can get caught up in a police brutality case at any moment if you're not 100% aware of your circumstances and the places you're at. And let me and the second you think you can is the day it happens to you. And that was me. I was like, you know, I mean, to this day, I got respect, by the way, for every first responder, because that's a tough, man, that job is so difficult and so tough, especially in the United States right now, where we've had a lot of issues, man. And I would just tell you that, and I didn't write the story for attention or anything else, and I don't even give any power to why it happened. There's no blame in it, but it happened. It was a part of my life. Now, I didn't want to write the story, in fairness, but the publisher was like, if you're going to do a book and you're going to teach people and you're going to help people, you can't leave any story out that somebody can say, why didn't you talk about that? So, look, I wrote it. I wrote about, you know, living out the childhood dream, the tens of millions of dollars that I made as a baseball player, the money that I made after baseball, which was mirrored my baseball career, right up to 2009, the economic collapse where we were not shielded and had to start over. And I would tell you, having big money is cool, but having it and losing it is worse than never having it in the first place, you know. And I would just tell you that my partner, my wife, my soulmate, my best friend, helped me get through one of the most difficult economic times of my life and I had the pressure on me because I'm the man of the family, man. And I was like, so I tell the story about that whole fall in the book. So there's a lot of things in there that led to really a system that I believe that if you applied the system, you can win at anything. And I've been able to use the exact same system in 4 different industries and make it to the top of the mountain in all of those industries and be able to do that. So I'm grateful and thankful. But that book really started 3 years ago now, which was 2 years ago before I wrote it. And I was with my father. My mother had called frantically. He's been battling cancer, multiple myeloma, for 16 years now. And he'd been 911 to a hospital in 4 years over 40 times. 911 wow. Over 40 times. And where every time they 911 him, we didn't know if we'd get him back out of the hospital. I mean, it was that bad. And she called, and she said, you got to get to Seattle now. And I called Erica. Erica called the airlines. I hauled ass to the airport. When I landed in Seattle, I didn't know if my dad would be living. And when I got to the hospital, he was running a fever of over 105. He didn't know what decade it was. forget the day, forget the year. He didn't know what decade. He was so, like, when you run fevers that high, you start losing. And 3 days later, from that moment, he led our family out of the hospital. And we're all looking at each other like, how in the world? Like, he's leading the march of the family out of the hospital. And we got to his house, and he looked at me and he says, let's take a drive in the mountains. I was like, cool. So I get into his truck, he gets in the passenger seat, he guides me, and we're in Sammamish and up in the mountains in the northwest, and he's like, man, there's some beautiful homes up here, Todd. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm just listening to my father, you know, and it was an incredible moment. And he says, you know, Todd, he says, one day, or he said, someday, I might buy a home in these mountains. And I'm driving, and I'm like, I just want Dad, my thought was, I just want to get you through today. See, but what I realized was he wasn't given any power to his current circumstances. He wasn't given power to his illness, to the cancer, to his life. He still had all of his power, everything was on this vision of his life. And I remember thinking like, wow, how could you even be, like, you're going to buy a house? Like, man, like, Dad, I'm just, you know. So I got home that night, or to his house, and I'm staying in the guest bedroom. I stayed there 10 days. And I'm staring at the ceiling, and I remember staring at the ceiling like, man, shame on me. You know, I had the blessing of the greatest mother and father. I had the blessing of the greatest environments that they could put their children in. I had the blessing to go into the School of Champions with Mano, Maris, Ford, Mercer, Munson, and Yogi Berra. I played with some of the greatest and most powerful athletes in the world. I was coached and managed by the elite, by the Hall of Famers. And yet, all of this was great for me. And it was all about me. It was me, hit my goals, win my games, make my money, win my championships. Me. And I remember at that moment, I was like, how selfish am I not to share what my father has shared with me? How foolish for me not to share the relationships with the Manos and the Munsons and the Cito Gastons and the Dave Duncans and the Dave Stewarts and the Ricky Hendersons. What a shame that I don't use the people that were around me at a moment where I was suffering or where I was trying to get to another place, and the way I got there was never me, it was the collection of the people, but yet I'm not sharing it with other people, helping them. And at that moment, I remember saying that this next part of my life will not have nothing to do with me, will have everything to do with other people, and I'm going to start it by writing this book. Now, I got to tell you something. You didn't learn today that I can make up words when I speak from stage, because when there's no one here to guard what I'm going to say, right? And by the way, Dave do an awesome job, right? He's awesome, yeah, right? But, because, man, you don't know where I'm going to end up when I'm talking on stage, and I can make words up, and they sound clear to me, but people are like, I don't know what he just said, you know, kind of like Ricky Henderson, you know. And I remember going home, and I get home, I'm so excited, and I tell my wife, I'm going to write a book. And she's like, oh, my Lord. How are you going to write a book? Like, you can't even put a sentence together. Your grammar and this. And she goes, and people pay you to speak, and they don't even know what you're saying. And I go, yeah. I'm going to deliver the stories, and then we'll get somebody else to figure out what I really said, and we'll come out into a book, right? So actually, I wrote the book, and I typed this way, and I typed out 52,000 words. And we put the stories together, and I had an editor go in and clean up some messes, of course, and then we hired another editor, and then it's going to come out July 1st. So I want you to pre-order it today. But, you know, I really do want you to pre-order it today. Now, but there's something I want you guys to know is, like, I promise you that I am not getting rich by buying a book from Amazon. So if you ever known anyone that wrote a book, right, they probably didn't get rich writing the book, right? My message is not about me. The message is a system that was developed through other people, through my life, through tragic times, where it's like, it's the dedication to my father, it's the gift to my children, and I believe that if you have a goal, you have a dream. Well, let me say this: if you don't have a dream, you've died on your feet. So if you've stopped dreaming, if you've stopped progression in your life, if you've gotten comfortable, you're dead while you're alive. And what a shame that would be. And I would encourage you to dream like you're a child again. Look, I'm 52. I got new dreams. I got new aspirations. I've been through multiple careers. I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. I don't know what next year. I just know that if I have a desire or a commitment in my heart and a discipline, I have a system that we built through the mentors that I've had in my life that I'm just offering. That, look, the book on Amazon is $12 and something, and it's like, you know, I'm not going to make enough to even pay for my flight to get back to the United States, all right? So I want you to order the book now. Like, we're not leaving the room. All right? I'm just kidding.
Todd's got an iPad on it.
You know.
Good place to leave it, I think, Todd.
Hey, listen, look, guys, I want you to know this, that it's fun. And because of Sean, you know, and because of a relationship that Sean and I have been building and have built, that's the reason we're here today. And you know, I'm proud that this weekend I'm going to be spending the weekend with a guy by the name of Robin Sharma, and you know, I think he's going to interview me on his stage at his Personal Mastery Academy, and so I'm sure I'll teach those people some different things. But my point is that because of Sean, I'm here, and I would just tell you that for me this was a big deal, and here's why. Because it's been so long since I've been back and been active or taken any kind of activity into the community. I didn't come back to make money, and I come back to deliver a message, and Sean's helping me deliver that message. I'm grateful to him, his friendship. I'm grateful that you guys showed up, because it would have been kind of funny, man, me doing an interview and nobody even gave a damn about what I had to say. But it's cool for me because there's so much history about my life in this city, in this country, and over the next decade, where I've maybe been missing for a couple decades, I'd like to come back and help people and not be the world champion, right? But be somebody that can grab somebody by the arm and say, we can do this and climb that mountain together. So thanks for making me feel welcome again in your country and in your city. I appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy.
Awesome.
Awesome.